Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to season two of Brothers Brown and Books. This is a series by Book Mecca, and my name is Shaylin Scott. I'm the founder of Book Mecca, an online Black bookstore and literary resource for all things Black lit. We do our best to bring the voices and stories of Black literature and Black authors to light, and we hope that we're able to shine a light not only on the things that we see in our fictional minds, but on reality stage as well, right in the pages of your home. So today is a little bit different because we love the experiences of our Black men. So we have four Black men who are here today who are readers, entrepreneurs, multi creatives, you name it. They have a long list of layers, but we value their input. And today we're going to talk about Black fatherhood and goal models, shifting from simply being a role model to being a goal model, and what their experiences are with not only Black literature and their first experiences of reading, but also their experiences with father figures and male role models in their lives and throughout, and a little bit of personal things too. So we won't go too deep, but we'll try and get as much in as possible in our hour that we have. So first up, I will introduce our guys that we have today. We have Andre Patterson. He is a self-proclaimed blurred, a Black nerd that he is. He is a technologist by trade, but a multifaceted entrepreneur at heart. He's originally from Plano, Texas, moved to Austin, and attended UT to obtain a bachelor's in management information system. Rose through the ranks in his career as an architect for one of the largest e-commerce websites in the world, then moved to high-tech software sales. And all the while, his family started to run businesses ranging from math and reading, skills mastery, to health and wellness, with recently a business called Escape Pain, which offers red and infrared light therapy treatment. He also supports a family of multi-talented artists. His wife and two children are actors and in the film and industry business. So welcome, welcome, Andre. Now I got you muted. There we go.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
you.
thank you. And next up, we have Zoe Amani. Lorenzo Zoe Amani is originally from Fayetteville, North Carolina. He holds a master's degree in higher and post-secondary education from Arizona State University and two bachelor's degrees in sociology and consumer studies from Virginia Tech. He's previously worked as a CRA coordinator for NCRC, as well as a board of governors of the Federal Reserve System. He's provided support for policy on the board's Community Reinvestment Act, and he plans to finish his doctoral degree in public administration and public affairs at Virginia Tech. His research focuses on federal and state financial services, policies that drive community development, and he is passionate about economic justice and financial inclusion and enjoys spending time with his family. So welcome, welcome, Zoe.
Having me. It's a very warm introduction. It's hard to beat Andre's, Andre, he has so many accolades. They don't want to know that.
All you guys get. All right. Next up, we have Amal Black. Amal Black is recently relocated to Dallas, Texas by way of Memphis, Tennessee. He is an author, a personality. He's recently began his own publishing company, I Am All Black Studios, Inc., and he's seeking to provide publishing and communication services to creatives and professionals. Aside from being an entrepreneur, he currently serves as a teacher at Kingdom Collegiate Academies, and he is just an all-around phenom. So welcome, welcome, Amal.
How's everybody? How's it going? I'm glad to be here. Good to see
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Jared Fitzpatrick. Jared is an experienced speaker, consultant, and leader with expertise in workplace culture, diversity and inclusion, talent acquisition, employee engagement, and leadership development. His passion is to unlock the potential in people and create environments where everyone feels valued. He's the author of 50 Questions Black Children Should Ask Their Fathers, a journal he wrote to help Black children connect more deeply with their fathers. And he grew up all over the country, but claims Texas as home. Woohoo, go Texas. And his wife currently live here in Texas, in Dallas, Texas. And when he's not working, he loves to experience new cultures and has traveled to all 50 states and over 30 countries. Wow. Welcome, welcome, Jared.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I know those bios are something you can't top, boy, I tell you. So thank you all for being with us today. And just to get us started, our topic today is Black fatherhood and goal models. And this is a topic that I feel very heavily about because I had a father who was heavily involved in my life in one side, but I had father figures who were not my father, who I also drew a lot of my experiences from. And so all of those men combined together kind of made up who I was. And I always looked for other children to have that same sort of role models or goal models as well. And so I'll start with this question. Who in your mind were the first father figures or role models that you had that kind of influenced where you are today? And I'll let either one of you guys can pop in.
I'll go ahead. Well, my father, I would say, Lawrence Black, he was the first father and father figure, well, only father and first father figure that I had every day to look up to. And I recognized him where, his, even though he was somebody who was still trying to develop and figure out how to be a parent as he was, parenting, he's someone who had his own trials and tribulations to go through, and that in seeing the example that he set and kind of navigating those things for us as children, it did kind of set the tone for what we could expect to come towards us in the future, and then also what we could pull from as we, encountered our own plights and different, things that came to us throughout life. So I would say my father.
I'll just piggyback off of that. Yeah, same scenario where my father was my father figure, my role model growing up. Um, you know, it's one of those things where as you look over your life, you become more and more appreciative of some of the the examples that you were given. And in my particular case, there was my dad's a pretty humble person. Not a quiet person, but pretty laid back. A lot of people have met my father, they say, man, he doesn't say much. Well, that's once you get him one-on-one, then he says a lot. But even when, we would have our conversations and our discussions, I never remember a time where he gave me any direct mandates or direct direction to go. Right. It was kind of like he took the approach that, son, whatever you decide to do, just do your best, period. Right. And he would exemplify that. And so I really appreciated that very much so as I got older, where he didn't force any particular ideologies down my throat or anything.
I can go next year. My dad was also my role model. And the thing that he did differently than I think some other dads did was from the time I was a baby, he made it very clear to me that his expectation was for me not to be like everybody else. Like he actually said those words, like, you're different from other people and I expect you to act like it. And it wasn't to make me feel like, oh, I'm special. It was really his way of saying that you're not going to be a statistic. Like, you're not going to end up like what you see in the news or what you see on, I guess, social media wasn't really a thing at the time, but now what you see in social media. And so growing up, it was very clear to me that not only was I expected to be different than others and act differently than others, but he was really setting the example without telling me that he was setting the example for me to, if nothing else, at least follow in his footsteps. Now, I didn't follow in his footsteps. He went in the military and I didn't go in the military, but he at least wanted to show here's what a career and whatever. He's a we're all Christians in my family. Here's what a Christian lifestyle looks like. And so he set that up from an early year. I'm talking like 4 years old. I knew what was up. And yeah, he never deviated from that to this day.
I guess I'll chime in. Those are all great answers. Definitely, I'll agree. I have a similar story. My father was my first father figure and role model. And of the many things he did, I think there's a few things that are really important, but the most important was the way he was just there for us at all times, no matter what. And he just really encouraged us to do good in school. And that was his basic expectation. He was like, he didn't have a lot coming from where he came from. He was just like, look, if you do good in school, good things will happen. So as long as we did good in school, we were fine. And another thing that was really critical was the way he treated my mother. My parents been married for about 32 years. And to, even as a child, to see my father engage with my mother and be respectful, be polite, be generous, be kind during difficult times, that really, really shaped me into the man I am today. So definitely know how to treat women, whether they're, I'm married now to about 2 years, just celebrate 2 years. So I do have to give a lot of props to my father for that, because, raising a family is not easy. I don't have any children right now, but I definitely understand the challenges of being married, and I respect him for always loving up on my mother, loving up on us, and just always being there, being present.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's so interesting that everyone has a different experience when it comes to their father figures or their father in general. And for some, it can be challenging, it can be traumatic, or they can have not a really good relationship with their fathers. I had a number of people to reach out to me to say that a lot of their father figures, or who they thought they wanted to model their lives after, came from their books. It came from the characters in their books. Were there any books that you read as a young boy growing up that kind of caught your eye, or thought like, this is a great example that I could model myself after, or that more people should read? I know some of you have written some books for sure, so I definitely want you to highlight those. But was there a book in particular that kind of shaped who you were? I'm gonna start picking on y'all now.
Now, what? It's so ironic. Growing up, at least for me, I didn't engage in a lot of, or wasn't even exposed to a lot of Black literature growing up, right? Growing up here in the suburbs and so on and so forth. That journey came later on. But my Black exposure that I did navigate towards a lot, believe it or not, was in comic books. So not necessarily, any particular literature, so to speak, but man, there's a lot of life lessons learned in comic books, that I can derive multiple, scenarios where, as a matter of fact, these were my dad's comics. So I went, during the summers, my family's from the north, so they would send me up north to go visit my grandmother. And I ran across a couple boxfuls of his comic books for when he was a kid. And so I would read those, get some cool storylines, and then bring it up to my dad, and he would remember them. He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." And so we would discuss, some of the deep issues, believe it or not, at the time. So again, it was not a direct, modeling, so to speak, but I do fondly remember a number of life lessons, especially from at least a Black fatherhood perspective, on engaging through comic books. That's
So
my.
you are a generational blurred, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, most definitely. most definitely. I'll take it. I'll accept it.
What about others of you? Any books that kind of piqued your interest as a young person? I know for me, the books that piqued mine was James Baldwin. I don't know why I was reading Baldwin so young, but I loved him.
So one book that stands out to me was not one that necessarily piqued my interest, but my mom made me read it. It was Gifted Hands by Ben Carson. And yeah, for those of y'all who are listening, this was Ben Carson before HUD and all that stuff. So this was like back when he was a world-renowned surgeon. And that was his name, his claim to fame. So, but in the book, it talks about how, his mom made him read 2 books, I think a week, and write a summary on the books and hand it to her like a book report. And my mom after I read the book made me start doing that. And so it really wasn't a option. Like, are you going to read? It was, what are you reading? And so I will say I didn't necessarily think to myself, oh, I want to be just like Ben Carson, but I did like the way that he was so disciplined, because he really wasn't that good of a student when he was a little kid. And only through his mom forcing him to read and him continuing to further his own studies did he become the great surgeon that he became. And so I just appreciated that the fact that we kind of took a life lesson from that book and then implemented it. And the only thing that I think helped me to become a better student was because of the fact that I love to read and I like to learn, right? And it came from me being a really young kid, probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, having to read these books during the summer and write reports on them. So anyways, that book always stands out.
I'll say it, and get free pizza. I always had those book it campaigns. Okay, fun random fact I'm gonna throw out there. Ben Carson was my commencement speaker at my graduation. Yeah. This is before HUD.
That was only like 5 years ago, right?
You know what? I had some stuff in my life. I didn't graduate till later. But he gave a great commencement speech. I have like his signed book and everything. But this is before HUD, before all of that. Yeah.
It's so funny that everybody has to qualify that. It's unfortunate that that's the case.
Yes.
Yes, he is smart. He's a sharp guy.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, Jared, it's Jared, right? Yes, sir. A lot like you, my mother used to make us read books and do book reports, and it didn't matter exactly who wrote the book or what the book was about. But she just wanted to make sure that we were reading. And Ben Carson's Gifted Hands was one of those books that she, at that time, I'm not going to lie now, that one was a requirement. There was another book called The Pact. I don't know if you all are familiar with it, but yeah, that was another book that I had to kind of read and just kind of digest. That was a requirement. But then I used to read stuff like Goosebumps, stories that just kind of inspired my storytelling and just the whole creative aspect of who I was. I think that not necessarily the characters in the stories, but the representation of the author was more of a benefit for me because I was going down that path so early, writing and trying to develop my own skills and see, okay, am I this writer or that writer? So I would say that the characters that were in my mind were like John Singleton, Spike Lee, and a lot of different others who I was really trying to pull from because I'm really into film and video. So I wanted to, in storytelling in that capacity. So for me, I was really looking up to them. Even Tyler Perry, and people used to say I used to look like, well, I couldn't go anywhere. People be like, you look just like Tyler Perry. And I don't know, some people say yay, some people say nay. But that being the case, more or less, those were my influences.
Love it, love it. What about you, Zoe?
I don't know if I have a good response for this one. You said books that inspired me just in general? Or what was the question?
Now, I'm random. So yeah, inspired you. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, well, kind of like a mall here in a way where I did this thing called Accelerated Reader in elementary school where you read the books and you get points. And my mom and dad, they didn't really like force me to read or certain things or say, you got to do this. It was more of like, I played sports growing up too. So reading for points and then like you get an award at the end of the year. I was always competing with Erica. I'll never forget Erica. She lived right down the street. First I was the reading champ until she came and we going back and forth. And the bigger the books, the bigger the points. So Harry Potter, you get like 20, 30 points versus a smaller book. But I did really like to read those mystery books to feed my curiosity because I think at that time I was trying to figure out how the world worked, right? And so those books fuel my curiosity. I think kind of like Goosebumps, Boxcar Children, Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, some of those mystery books And now that I'm in a graduate program, PhD, as I'm listening to these other brothers speak, I'm like, you know what, maybe, that's part of the original oil that kind of lubricated my mind to get me like curious and engaged about trying to explore the world, try to figure out how I position myself in the world. So that's my short answer.
I love it. And that's a good segue. Because speaking of curiosity and learning who you are in the world and growing up as a young Black boy, and I have nephews and cousins who I see growing up, and they're all turning into all these different people. It's so fun to watch the personalities grow. And you always want to see them grow into something positive. Even if you don't have children, someone is watching. There are your cousins, your nephews, your whoever, especially if you're an educator, someone is watching. Are there things that you consciously do to make sure that you set examples for the next generation that may be watching you, whether it's your own children or it's someone that you don't even know?
I'll weigh on. Oh, go ahead, Amal. You can go. Okay. So I'll weigh in on that one definitely. So that, as a matter of fact, that's been a conversation that my family, my nuclear family, my wife and my 3 kids have had as of late. There was an interview. So I think I told you last time, Shaylin, that one of my favorite people in the world is Karen Hunter, and so I listen to her all the time. Her and Greg Carr and these folks, and she did an interview with this gentleman named Jason Wilson. And he was talking, he's got a book coming out, but he was basically going down the path of why Black men should let their sons see them cry. And that opened up a whole talk track, right? That was extremely impactful. And I was able to have a very direct conversation with my son in particular on being very intentional on maybe not necessarily going so far as just crying all the time, this, that, and other, but having engaging conversations about different things about how you're feeling, discuss feelings, right? And so that's something I know for a fact that I've done for a long time with him, my daughter. Now with my eldest, I have to put a quota on her because she she just likes to keep talking. I wonder where she gets that from, but but yeah, that's definitely something I know for a fact that I've been very intentional about on modeling, not just for them, but just especially Black kids in general, right? I mean, I know all kids go through their own identity crisis and so on and so forth, but they're dealing with so much these days. There's so many challenges that are going on that they've got to be processing something with COVID, with the racial and social justice challenges, and so I think it's really important to let the young ones see how us adults are having to process things and how do we process those things. And so that's something I've been intentional about.
So yeah, I would definitely agree with you and say that, and even in recent times, for me, I think that in trying to develop, I'm 33 now, and I feel like I'm at that age where you're like just starting to realize that your friends have children who are old enough to listen to you now, and so you're like that person who's like, oh, I knew you when you were a baby, or I knew your mama when we were in school. And it's like, wow, I'm really turning into my parents, right? I don't have any children, but through being a teacher and just serving in so many different capacities within the community, one thing that I'm learning that has been very beneficial for me as I try to reach out to other young people is to listen to the people who have come before me. And I think that it's a real testament and a real skill in learning how to be obedient. And I think that obedience doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do everything that you're told, but it's utilizing the discernment that you have in order to do what you're being told, if that makes sense. So it's to say, you may have a dream as a child, and that's another thing that I used to speak to, well, I still do speak a lot to, is, having a vision and having a dream. But it has taken for me to listen to other people, like to go back to your question when you said to kind of discuss how you go about setting the example. And for me, being on social media, it's always a challenge because, again, when you're in the entertainment industry or you're working and that's where your dreams are going towards, it's a total different ball game. And it's one of those things where you do have to take social accountability and social responsibility into consideration, even if you want to do things your way, the way you see doing it, and having to say, wait a minute, there are a lot of young people that will possibly come into this content that I'm posting or whatever the case may be. And I've had to battle with that, honestly. I really have, and still to this day, I battle with that. And my mother and I were having a conversation about it the other day. But what I pulled from that conversation was, you're not going to always get it right. You're not always going to be the best role model, which is why I really do appreciate the goal model tag that you presented in this conversation, because it says to me that a child doesn't have to look to me to be the character that they're trying to develop for themselves. But the goals that I set for myself, you can pull from and learn different things from, and that allows for me as the mentor to just focus on being skillful, focus on imparting those types of things on the child, as opposed to having the pressure of being perfect all the time. Because again, as a role model or as a character, you're supposed to be the perfect reflection of, even in my mind or their mind, this person to go follow after. But I don't want you to follow me. I just want you to look at what I do and then learn how to visualize where you're trying to go and set goals for yourself. So again, I guess the short answer would be, for me, is to listen and be obedient, as well as develop my own kind of perspectives, and then monitor what I'm posting. Because it's not always going to be, just like a child can watch a rated R movie, but at the same time, there's something that they might be able to pull from that rated R movie, even though they weren't supposed to watch it. But again, they watched that and were exposed to something that's going to lead to questions that a person like yourself, parent, teacher, role model, is going to have to either break down for them or answer some questions. So again, I just want to be a good goal model, and I keep it at that.
Look at you dropping them gems. I see.
That's what I'm seeing.
That's tough to follow, Amal. I'm gonna fall back.
No.
That was great. I'm over here taking notes. I'm like, this is a seminar for me after you and Andre went. I know, Jared, you got some heat too, but I'll just jump in and say I agree with everything that was said, and I really, really agree with everything that was said. It's very powerful. And I'll just say this. I think right now what I'm trying to do, maybe if you asked me this question a few years ago, I might have a different answer. But right now, because I'm married, and I come from a culture where it's, sports. I'm coming from, it's like, it's women all over the place. I just, there's different perceptions on what it's like to even be in a relationship with a woman, not even be married. So being married, right now I'm kind of leading my peers in a way, not necessarily leading them to something they don't want to do, but I'm just saying, like, I'm like one of the first to kind of make that jump, and I did it really effortlessly, and I'm doing a really good job at it. So one of the things I try to do is, when I'm talking to my brothers, younger, older, around the same age, is I kind of debunk the myths about marriage just being this horrible process that you don't have control over. Your life ends. There are all these negative perceptions, and I just try to, I speak very highly about my wife and our relationship because everything is fine, but I also kind of just drop nuggets about, respect and communication, and hey, maybe we didn't get taught conflict resolution, in school. Probably what we should have been, focusing on, and, just talking about the value of women, especially, African-American women, as it pertains to building our community, etc. So if you had asked me that question 3-4 years ago, it would have been like, I'm just trying to represent, trying to do well in academia, show these young brothers there's academic goals out there and pursuits. But, that's part of it. But I think now it's more of like being married and walking into hopefully fatherhood soon. It's like, whoa, I think conversations I had with other people about this, and I'm hearing the dialogue, I think people got it wrong. And I think these negative stereotypes about us loving women and pouring into a relationship, being honest, vulnerable, being able to manage conflict and work together, I think that conversation, I need to jump into that conversation as well and represent there.
And that's growth. I love how you mentioned how your role modeling or your goal modeling doesn't end or just, it's not dedicated just to you. It's your peers, it's your boys, it's those who are around you as well. It does not end there. You are representation of who you want to be around you as well, too. And if everybody around you doing dirt, you probably don't want to do that. But you can model the best things that you have learned as you've grown up too. What about you, Jared? You now I want to ping you because you've written a book, like a whole book on exactly what we're talking about. So please drop some nuggets.
Well, I just got to say, I agree 100% with Zoe. I'm married, but I don't have kids. And I feel like part of my example is me as a husband. And so when I first got married, we went through marriage counseling. And the thing that I remember the most was they said, your marriage is a ministry. Like the way that you act around other people towards your wife showcases to them what a healthy marriage should look like. Right. And so I 100% co-sign what you said about uplifting and affirming my wife in public. The other thing I was going to mention, I'm not around kids that often. I was thinking about it as y'all were talking. I was like, man, I don't remember the last time like I was just in a space with like a lot of kids because of COVID, and I don't have kids, but
I got some kids
whenever
for you, Jared, by the way.
I was gonna say I'm okay. But whenever I'm around our extended family, there's always kids around, and I think the thing that I focus on most is again affirming not just my wife but other Black women, because society will often make Black women feel like they're unloved, and unfortunately, even Black men don't do the best job of making our Black women feel like they have value and that they're respected, and so especially for our elders, our older women. If I see one standing up, I'm like, let me get out of my chair. Here's your seat. You want me to make a play for you? Like I try to make the especially the young brothers understand that your role as a leader is not that you get to tell everybody what to do. It's that you get to serve everybody. And you will sacrifice your own comfort and happiness to ensure that others around you are cared for. And then just shameless plug on the book. So I wrote a journal to connect with my dad. And before we started this, we really had I would say more of like when we see each other, we would talk type of relationship, but we didn't like call each other to just see how each other was doing or really even text. And so I wrote this last Father's Day as a gift to him. And the book was one part of it, but really the larger part of it was every week after I gave it to him, we would sit down virtually because he lives in San Antonio. And we would spend an hour just going through some of the questions. And it talks about his childhood, what it was like for him growing up in Montgomery, Alabama, in the segregated, South during civil rights. We talked about his adulthood and how he knew when it was time to get married, when it was time to have kids, or when it was time to make a career shift. And then we talked about, what he's learned as a husband, as a father, and what legacy he wants to leave. And we recorded all the sessions. And when I tell you that, like, he didn't think that he was gonna enjoy it as much as he did. Like, I could tell he was kind of like, oh, this is gonna be all right. But like both of us loved it. Like, it was so much fun just to hear the stories. And it flowed naturally. It wasn't, at a certain point, we just went off script. We weren't even going off the questions anymore. And because we recorded it, that's his legacy. Right? Like, I can show that to my kids, their kids. They can know their granddad way better than I ever knew mine, because I never got to ask him some of those questions. So that's the whole premise of the 50 questions Black children need to ask their fathers. And I wrote it that way because it was designed for a father and son. But a lot of the questions you could ask, a father figure or even your mother, right? And so that's the whole purpose behind it. But yeah, definitely went way over on answering your question. But since you prompted me, I said, let me go ahead and talk about it.
Because I'm going to tell you, I tried to do what you did with my father. We gonna work on it. We're gonna work on it. He was not quite as open to doing it. I just threw the idea out there. Said, what if I just ask you these questions? I got one word answers. Yes. No. We're working on it. We're working on it. But that's okay. That's neither here nor there. Speaking of talking with father figures and those who are close in our lives, a lot of you talked about some of the difficult topics or some of the things you wish you would have known when you were younger or things you should have been taught as a young man growing up. How do you model that moving forward? Or how have you even learned how to deal through those things? Was it trial and error, or was it reading some of those books or going through counseling? What were those kind of things that kind of help you to level up?
Yes.
All of
all
it.
the above. I think from from my perspective, so I've been married, going on 15 years. And so thank you, appreciate it. We got married on the younger side, so we were way ahead of many of our friends when we got married. But I think right now I've personally been going through a lot of introspection over the past years as to why do I do the things that I do? Why do I think the way that I think? Constantly evaluating, what does, and forgive the phrase, but what does being Black mean, right? I mean, because that comes up a lot, especially amongst us. And so what sent me down that path is a lot of reading. So I've done way more reading now over the past, 10 years or so than ever before. I've picked up a lot of books, especially on history, especially on, just the overall, thought processes of why we are the way we are. I think Shayla and I brought up the last session that we did. One of my favorite books recently is Brainwashed by Tom Burrell, where he's talking about dispelling the myth of Black inferiority. And he covers a lot of those topics as to, why there's a lot of dysfunction. And so as I was going through that book, I'm evaluating myself. I'm like, man, do I have that dysfunction? Yeah, I do. Right. And so it was definitely, it's still an ongoing process, but that process also has helped me move in that direction of expressing myself as a full human being. Because at the end of the day, we're humans, right? I mean, so it helps you be a lot more empathetic when dealing with others. And so I've loved this journey that I've been going through just within myself as I'm dealing with other folks. And that gives me a lot more context when I'm having conversations with them, when I'm trying to get a better feel for, don't just ask them, a question, but ask them, well, why did you do that? Why do you think that led you there, and those types of things. And so I would say that therapy was one of those things that came up in the midst of all that, where my wife was way more open to it than I was. But that's, I don't know, for a lot of other Black folks, but it's not really a Black thing. Just pray it out, right? Pray it out, you'll be good.
Not
and
Black
so
shit. It's getting
what's
there.
that?
It's not yet. It's getting there.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's those are definitely different aspects that I've personally taken into consideration as I've been developing myself as a young Black man, or middle-aged Black man now, I guess. Can I say young Black man?
You can say young
You look
to
young.
say it forever.
Yeah, Black don't crack.
That's right.
I don't really have a great answer. The thing that's helped me the most has been marriage counseling. I've actually never been to a therapist. I want to. So y'all hold me accountable. If I come back on here next time, I want to make sure y'all ask me.
I got some referrals if you want them.
All right. But yeah, but I think marriage counseling helped me the most to really level up because, again, just going from a single Black man who was just worried about myself and my responsibilities to somebody who has to be thoughtful about and empathetic to what another person needs all the time, definitely changed how I think, how I behave, even, just like the whole aura of my personality. I meet some of my friends, who I haven't seen in a while, And they're like, man, you just different. Like everything about you is just different. I'm like, in a good way. And they're like, yeah, you're like much more responsible now. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. I'll take that. Yeah, I think that was probably the thing that helped me level up the most was just going through that counseling process, which is why I want to do counseling for myself. So I'm like, if that helped that much, I can only imagine what actual some one-on-one therapy would do. So again, y'all hold me accountable to that.
We will do that. All about self-improvement, self-care, and self-love. I love it. Anybody? Come on. Yeah. Oh, you on mute?
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, yeah, no, I was gonna say, as far as things that I guess I would do, teaching, like they say, as long as you're trying to teach somebody how to do something, then you kind of have to practice what it is that you're teaching. And so I try to do a lot of that. And the biggest thing that I've been even on myself about lately is understanding and where one, you're not perfect. And I think that when you tell somebody else that you're not perfect, then it makes you more human to them. So I've been trying to really focus on being authentic. And that's when I keep having to tell myself, don't worry about someone not liking you. Don't worry about someone not accepting, your perspectives or where you're coming from, your life, your lifestyle, what you dreamed or whatever. But understand that it matters, but you don't have to be perfect. That was the biggest thing. But then the next thing for me was just the routine thing that you grow up as a young man kind of doing. Like for me and the women in my family have a really special relationship, especially me and my mother, hers, my aunts and stuff like that. They were very big on, making sure we knew to open the door for the woman. And it didn't matter who she was. If you're going to the mall and you're walking in front of a woman and you see one kind of pacing herself up, you may take a second to stop and hold the door, because again, it's that transference of energy for me. It's like, you don't know this lady from Eve or Adam or anybody, but at the end of the day, you could have made her feel good. So doing stuff like that, and then really making sure that I'm knowing, I guess, how to communicate and when it's important for me to be not just communicating as in just the word, but effectively communicating. Like if it's going to be verbal, am I saying what I mean and meaning what I say? Am I doing certain things that are a reflection of the things that even I'm thinking and communicating with myself in my head? And just, I think, aligning myself with everything, all my facets, making sure they're all aligned. I think if my father, my grandfather, who he passed away at 100 years old, so that was like 100 years worth, and he used to sit us down and make us listen to the history, make us listen to certain things, make us listen to him, all day. It didn't matter. He just, because he felt so good about himself, and he was a really good man. But it was just a matter of honestly taking in all of that information and learning how to apply it, because that was the hard part. You looking at your father and your uncles and everybody else. I'm hearing what you're saying. I need you to show me how it's done. So again, I'm not married and I don't have any children, but in being a teacher and seeing where the kids come to you all the time, they like, I wish you was my uncle. I wish you was my daddy. And I'd be like, I don't know. But then again, hey, if that's how you feel, I can't take that from you, but it's a compliment. But then it is one of those things where it does make you want to hold yourself even more accountable. And again, that social responsibility becomes more of a challenge, and you're just trying to be disciplined. And I think that's the hardest part about being a man, woman, is living with discipline, because sometimes you want to, turn up. You want to feel spring break. Every day should feel like spring break, but it can't be spring break. So having to discipline and tell yourself what things are appropriate and in what spaces are things appropriate. And that's where I'm trying to gauge and needing even more mentorship and guidance myself, so that way I can see how other men feel about seeing certain things as I present them or people around me present them. So, yeah.
Well, I just want to commend you, Amal, as an educator, because there are not a lot of Black male educators in K through 12 system. And I can count on my hand how many I experienced. And they were coaches. They didn't teach. They were.
Oh, yeah.
So seeing that, I'm sure they look to you as, okay, I can listen to him. I can get more from him then I probably have experience at home. So
Yeah.
I soak all that in, soak that in.
Yeah, they do. They come in and tell you everything. So to the fathers, watch what you do, because I'm telling you, they telling on you at school. We're not gonna say nothing. I'm not gonna say
Yeah, kids are snitches. They
they
are.
are some snitches, and understand they ain't scared to snitch. They be calling out for help. So I just say that.
I'll jump in. You all made some great points. I'm glad you brothers are on the line today. I really appreciate it. I'm taking notes myself. It's just good to hear you all speak about things you worked through, things you've been through, things you want to do in the future. I'll take the conversation in a little bit of a different direction. I think, one of the difficult topics just growing up, and just I don't want to speak for the Black community or our whole community at large, but I think talking about money and understanding money and how to make it work for us, as far as like home ownership, purchasing assets, or to take it a step back before you can purchase a home or assets, like landing a job and how to, be a professional. And I got a lot of like basics from sports, like, show up on time. Actually, they're more than basics, really, because, being coachable, putting in a lot of effort. But some of those things are how to navigate the political realm of work, because no matter where you work, there's some politics. And if you don't know how to navigate that, sometimes we get tripped up. But also like what to do when we actually do make money. How do we spend it? Do we get credit cards? Or how many credit cards should we get? Should we get a savings account? Should we get a certificate of deposit? All these different things that I think I've learned over the years that I wish I would have known earlier, but I take pride in knowing that I've learned it now. And I definitely want to not share the knowledge, because I'm not going to go out there and tell people how to flip houses or anything, but I'm open to the financial empowerment, curriculums, and trying to get out there and tell people at least the basics. So we're not starting from behind when we graduate from school, and we know a little bit of what to do with our finances. So that's one of the challenges, one of the things that, that I wish I would have learned, and I try to share with others.
I love it. Now I could talk to you guys like for so long. We only have 10 minutes left. I know time went by so fast, but I do want to talk about this one. If you can keep it real short, I don't know, y'all some talkers, but keep it real short. As a Black man growing up, there are a lot of stereotypes when it comes to Black men. Black men don't read. Black men don't do this. They don't do this. They're all these things that a lot of them are negative. How have you been able to kind of shake those off and set the examples to those around you, like without it kind of feeling as if defensive or angry, because those things do exist? I know that's a loaded question. I should have asked that one probably earlier. Too late now. Anybody? If not, I will keep it rolling. Go ahead, Amal.
I'm sorry. I'm a talker. I ain't gonna lie. Sorry, guys. But I can say, if anything, you are not a reflection of your haters and what they think of you. You're a reflection of the people who praise you and what they think of you. And I say that because so many times we get into this mode of thinking we hear something negative about ourselves, and then that comes into our self-talk. That's how we talk to ourselves and everything like that. But you don't want to staple that in your mind. You want to shake those things off and pay attention to what people are praising you for, because if you let the haters shape your identity, you won't know you will be this ball of negativity. You will be this ball of insecurity and everything else. So learning how to shake off the insecurity from what the haters have put up, seeds that they've sown, and just pick up on the ones that praise you and go from there, and just keep your vision strong based off what they see.
I've got one. So I'll just bring up the fact that for me, I've never had too many people directly give me haterisms or anything like that, but it's the messaging that's out there, the messaging. And so what I find myself oftentimes is overcompensating, right? It's kind of like the Black folks that over tip because we never tip, right? Or we always go above and beyond, and try to prove that, hey, I'm not that dude. And so that comes with a level of anxiety. I mean, it really does. And, you know, when I was growing up, you know, the deal was you got to do better than to be considered as good as. And so I think, you know, definitely about the positive energy, but that's a real thing that I think I know I dealt with, and I've talked to some other friends that dealt with the same thing.
I agree 100% with Andre. I still deal with that. There's several stereotypes that I was talking to one of my coworkers the other day about this. It's like the stereotype that Black men are aggressive or violent, right? So if I see somebody of a different persuasion, especially a woman, get on an elevator, I might think twice, like right as I'm entering, or do I even get on an elevator? Maybe I'll wait for the next one. Or you know, the stereotype, I don't think it's just related to men, but Black people in general, you know, are lazy. So that means I'm working twice as hard. Like, you're not gonna catch me during work hours, not, you know, with my light green, because I don't want you to think I'm over here chilling at the house just because you can't see me. And so I do think I tend to uh, overcompensate is the right word for these stereotypes that are just not true. The other one, and again, I'm not a father, but the Black men are absent from their families' lives. When I become a father, I will probably overcompensate for that one as well, right? And I can't help it, and it's why I like to give back a lot to kids now. Like, I always am trying to find like a group I can go speak to, so that nobody could say like, "Oh, he didn't try to give back." And it's I don't know if there's a right answer to that question of should we be or should we not be, but I feel like to whom much is given, much is required. And sometimes, especially where I'm the only one who looks like me in the space, I feel like I am representing the rest of our race, especially Black men, and I have to almost be that example to say, so that if they encounter more of us, right, they're not like, oh, the stereotype is true. They say, well, actually, Jared proved it wrong. So maybe, you know, Amal or Zoe or Andre are not going to be so bad, right? And it's like, it's crazy that I have to think like that, but I do.
So I know we have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to keep it short. You all have given a lot of gems, a lot of nuggets for everyone to take in, and we could talk for hours. And I am so excited that a lot of you will be back for our next 2 series coming up. The big thing what I thought about today's topic was kind of shifting from role model to goal model. Amal kind of hit it on the head. It is more than just simply being a structure to model your life after. Goal model is what we should strive to be for our young people, for our children, for our brothers, for our sisters. We should strive to be better individuals throughout our lives. And as you are growing and you are reading and experiencing life and developing into the men that you are setting that example in more ways than just simply a model that can be on paper. It can't be learned in school. And so you're already doing those things above and beyond. So I thank each and every one of you for your comments, your feedback. Thank all the viewers for all of your attention today. I do want to say next series coming up, we have November 10th, Black Love is an Act of Heroism. Y'all will definitely want to tune in for that, for sure. That's going to be fire. And then next month for our breakthrough series with Book Mecca, we have Sadika Johnson, Yellow Wife. If you have not gotten this book, New York Times bestselling, top book club book, it's a beast. You will want to read it for sure. So we have a lot to talk about, and I want to thank you all again. Any last words before we chime out from you guys?
Last little thing, please go to my website. It's www.imabsincpublishing.com, and I just started an online journal, so I'll be putting, just articles and things that I've written over the year or whatever the case may be, and just kind of posting my blog information there too. So please go to my website. I'll post it below too, or kind of get with you about that. But yeah, follow me there.
All right. Anybody else?
Same. On my name, it says Mosaic Matchmaking. That's actually my wife and I's business. She does the matchmaking, and we're geared towards professionals of color. And so, if you're looking for love, haven't found it yet, it's not too late.
All
Let us
right.
know. We can hook you up. MosaicMatchmaking.com.
Okay. Andre, Zoe, final words?
Just thanks for having me. I always enjoy these sessions. So I appreciate you getting fellow Black men together to have these discussions. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll chime on with Andre. Just really appreciate, joining the session tonight. We might need an hour and a half, 2 hours for that next segment in November.
That's what I'm thinking too.
We might need to block off 2 hours.
Yeah. Hey, if y'all are down, I'm down. I'm here. So okay. I'm gonna hold you to it. So everyone who watches anything I do, I always end with a quote because I just love it. And I already told you who my favorite writer was, Baldwin. So this is my quote: "Children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they have never failed to imitate them." The illustrious James Baldwin. That man says it all. So thank you all for being here. Thank all you viewers. Watch the replay on YouTube, Facebook, IG, and come to bookmecca.org and follow us for more. All right. Thank you, guys.